Hello, hello, hello. We're doing Roger Waters again, because I know you loons just love these videos. I just sat through nearly 3 hours of the Joe Rogan podcast, which dropped recently. Again, this kind of, I guess this follows that Rolling Stone thing. He's had to do some damage limitation. You can tell the kind of class of person that Roger Waters is, because throughout the interview he refers to the interviewer that interviewed him at the Rolling Stone as a prick and mocks him openly. The most important takeaway from the Joe Rogan podcast piece with Roger Waters is we do discover who Roger Waters' biggest fan is. It's Roger Waters. He has a very high estimation of himself, and he loves to talk about his lyrics and how wonderful they are, and just what a great guy he is. But you also get to see the contradictory nature of his argument. Now, before I start, I am neither pro-Israel or Palestine. They have both been bad, right? He forgets, Hezbollah, Hamas, the terrorism against, Israel in the 80s, and that's why, it's a conflict that's gone on for years. I think they're both bad as one another. I think they both need their heads knocked together. I would ban religion tomorrow. That's where I'm coming from, right? So you got to put that out there, right, first. But he says, it's bad, that that Israel occupies Palestinian land. It is. The land grab that they do is bad, right? I agree. But then, in the same podcast, Russia, grabbing parts of Ukraine with the referenda, which I said he'd be favourable about. Remember, the Russians organised those referenda. Organised them. They weren't independent. The UN didn't go in and organise the referenda, for the Ukraine people in those regions. It wasn't independently held. It was held by the Russians. Remember the Russians. If you want to know what how the Soviet machine was created, it all began with the Romanov family being slaughtered barbarically, so that there was never any further claim to Russia, via the dynasty. It's real Game of Thrones stuff, where people being bayoneted, kids, stabbed in the chest and shot in the head. That's what Russia would, because Roger loves his history. That's how Russia was founded, and they did that so that there was no one living in exile, and no one could lay further claim to Russia. From an exile base, they removed the bloodline, right? So if they did that at the very beginning of the creation of the Soviet Union, you can imagine that Russia's very good at steering its own narrative now. They like controlling things. But again, I'm not against the idea of Russia or the Russian people. It's Putin I have issues with. So yeah, he can say, oh, it's bad. It's bad for an occupying force, but it's all right for Russia to do it because they held a referenda. They held a referenda, a series of referenda, and that makes it fine. You see the contradictory nature of Roger Waters. In one moment, he's condemning, what's going on in Iran at the moment, but he also condemns, the US's foreign policy against Iran. But he's also thrilled when he meets, some Iranian politico at a hobnob meeting. He's a great guy, is old Rog. He's a great guy, full of contradictions. He's not consistent in his condemnation, whereas I am consistent in my condemnation. I want the war to end, but that will only happen if Russia withdraws. Right? They have no claim to those states, and if they do want to have referendums or referenda on those areas, let the people decide, but do it independently of Russia. Let the people decide. I believe in power to the people. Again, Waters is obsessed with the elites, but Putin's an elite, Assad's an elite. These people are all elites. We need to overthrow all these governments, don't we? We do need to return power to the people. Again, some things me and Roger politically aligned on. But he's not consistent. He's inconsistent. He has a blind spot to Russia and China. You know, certain places there is a deliberate blind spot. Yeah. Then there's the Assange issue. Oh, he's a journalist. He's not a journalist. He never was a journalist. You know, he never did any journalism. He just leaked things. He leaked information that was stolen from governments. He's no better, you know, than one of those, you know, spy types. You know, in the Cold War, you know, he had his spies that leaked information. Now, a proper journalist, a proper bona fide journalist, would have released the stories. You know, the harmful, the stuff about, you know, the bad things that America did, you know, in its foreign policy. They would have put it in an article, and they would have, you know, put all the proof there in the article, and they would have kept their sources safe. Assange never did that. He just published everything and risked. Again, he was into chaos and anarchy. He wanted to bring down governments. And journalists don't necessarily want to, you know, bring down entire regimes. They tend to want to reveal the truth. His methods aren't journalism. That's my problem with Assange, right? You know, that's my problem with him. And I think, you know, if you're going to reveal the truth, again, truth can be a very subjective thing. Truth can be different things to different people. There is no one unified truth. You have to be very careful what you do with that information. And again, Assange, he was drunk on being the rock star, getting laid, you know, going around. You read the accounts of him, you know, just picking up groupies. That's how those sex assault charges and rape charges were levelled at him, because he used his influence to sleep with a lot of women. Oh, Darren, you're just jealous. No, I'm not. I'm just saying how it is. You know, you've got to look at the motivations of these people. And I don't think he's, you know, your average journalist. They're not journalists to get laid. You've got to remember, you know, I studied bloody journalism, you know, part of my degree and everything. It's, you know, this is why I get very offended, you know, by people claiming that Assange is any kind of a journalist. He's not, because a journalist handles their sources and the material that they have with sensitivity and intelligence. He never did that. He just put it all on the internet. Just went, you know, and that's not journalism. You know, that's leaking information, which is something quite different, and I think again is harmful. So again, that's where I come from. But yeah, it's a very interesting podcast. If you can sit through nearly 3 hours of it, there's very little music talk. Again, he talks about Syd Barrett and, oh, it was so terrible, but it never really kind of owns the situation, because you've got to remember that the band treated Syd Barrett rather badly. I think, you know, Nick Mason and Davey Boy Gilmore have both, you know, regretted their actions, you know, back then, that they didn't handle the situation well. Whereas Roger Waters has made an entire career out of the collapse of Roger Barrett. There's another Roger, see. And yeah, he's made a career out of it, and all of his lyrics and his imagery, you know, and tracks of plot in the wall have come from, you know, Barrett's collapse. But there's no real sadness there, you know. It's just, oh, again, it made him rich. It made him rich, and I'm critical of that, and I've always been critical of that. And he wonders why Syd Barrett didn't want to meet him or be reminded of him, because it was fucking painful, and you made a career out of it, you know. Yeah, you made a career out of exploiting his madness. Shine on, you crazy diamond. Ka-ching. So yeah, do go and watch it. It's a very interesting thing. The best part comes at the end, because Joe Rogan, right, he's not very smart. He's one of those dangerous people that's got a media platform, but he's a bit of an empty-headed idiot. He really is. And he started going on about Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm sitting there going, don't mention Maxwell, don't mention Epstein, because Roger Waters had a few trips on Epstein's jet, didn't he? And Do you remember when it all came out and these people had to kind of damn? Oh, it was only a few times. It was only like half a dozen times. They played it down. And how do you get Roger Waters to shut up and pontificating? You just mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, because Roger was very quiet. Go and watch that section. Go and watch it. And his silence and guilt was palpable. It's like, yeah. But he does explain, about the... I'm not an anti-Semite. When I put the Star of David on that pig, I was using it to illustrate Israel. That's the problem. If you show people the Star of David, they're not necessarily going to go, oh, that's Israel, that is. They're going to say, oh, that's the Jewish symbol. We see it on synagogues, we see it everywhere as representing the Jewish faith. And that's my problem with it, because symbols are important. Those little pictures, those little icons have weight and meaning. And they don't necessarily mean what you think that they mean or what you intend them to mean. Now, if you wanted to criticise Israel, you should maybe use the Israeli flag, which does include the Star of David. But to use the Star of David and to put it on a pig, I don't know. He mentions the crescent, but I don't think the crescent has the same kind of weight as the Star of David in terms of talking about Islam. It doesn't have that same kind of political, religious symbolism, again, because of the Holocaust and and everything. It doesn't have the same kind of weight, so I don't think it's easy to wheedle your way out of there. And again, he mentions cabals and the elite, and you do have to, Roger wonders why the little people haven't risen up and had a revolution. Do you know why? Because we're too fucking busy trying to put money on the table and trying to keep our heads above the water. It's all right for you millionaires, you multi-millionaires, Roger, who can, swan around the world, polluting the world with your fucking tours. You're just a fucking entertainer. I love the hypocrisy of it all. It's all right for you, because you don't have to worry about money. You can do the whole bleeding art liberal thing, but you don't really mean it, do you? Because it's all about you. It's all about bums on seats and selling tickets to a gig. It's a real shame that Pink Floyd isn't going, because people, if Roger Waters and Pink Floyd were touring at the same time in the same town, everyone would be going to see Pink Floyd and not Roger Waters. They just go to you because you're all that's left. You're the last man standing. Well done. But yeah, do go and watch or listen to the Joe Rogan Roger Waters podcast. It's really an appalling 3 hours of ego on show. It's just a massive ego on show. There's no self-awareness there. There's someone who's obsessed with history, but he's not obsessed with what's right. Because with Ukraine, if he really wanted an end to that conflict, yeah, he's written a letter to Putin, but he's not saying get out of Ukraine. And then he goes, oh, Zelensky and his missus is Zelenska. Did you know that they have gendered names, in that part of Europe? It's like, yeah, we do, because we're not ignorant like you, Rog. We're not ignorant like you, He's so stupid, it ain't even funny. But it's because of probably banging around with Epstein, isn't it? But yeah, just go and watch it for the Epstein section. It's near at the end, where you can hear Roger Waters' arsehole making buttons. It is hilarious. But of course, there'll be people out there saying, Darren, what do you know? We've never heard of you, but we've heard Roger Waters. That's not the point. This is not for you. This is for my regular viewers, the few people that support me, who have the same kind of mindset. Again, if you want to know where a lot of this comes, there's websites called, the Grey Zone. Go there and you can see where Roger gets all his info from, about Syria and, whatever. But yeah, he's a contradictory fellow, He's not somebody who's really about world peace at all. He's not. He just wants he wants a certain kind of regime in power. And if you're not the right regime, then No, 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 no. No, 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 no. No. Remember, Israel invaded Palestine. Bad. Russia invading Ukraine. Good. It's as simplistic thinking as that. So what the Israeli government is doing is hold referenda in Palestine. And then I guess Roger would be okay with that, wouldn't he? You know, he'd be okay with that. Yeah. But anyway, it's a very... is it interesting? If you're interested in a rock star's unfettered ego, then yeah, it's truly is fascinating, and you will soon have a favourite member of Pink Floyd now between him and Gilmour. You go, I think I like Gilmour better. I like Gilmour better because he sold all his guitars and gave it to a charity he believed in, you know, whereas Rog just wants to get those bums on seats. But anyway, so yeah, I'm cashing in on the Joe Rogan podcast because, hey, why not? I've been accused of it, even though I did that video a few days ago when the Rolling Stone story broke. Again, he's such a horrible little man. He really is a horrible little man, Roger Waters. He's just nasty. But there, thank you for watching. I've said my piece. You can now criticise me below in the comment section and tell me what a sheep I am in the mainstream media and blah de blah de blah de blah, and I will laugh. I will laugh at you. Ha 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 ha. Because even Rogan says we sound like conspiracy theorists. That's because you are. It's because you are. And that's the end of that one. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta.